All right. Peace and blessings, everyone. Love and light to you all. Thank you for coming out. Much appreciated. As everyone knows, over the past several months, New York City has welcomed over 400,000 asylum seekers. I'm grateful for so many New Yorkers who have stepped up to the plate during our time of need in support of our newest neighbors. I met one of the first buses at the Port Authority bus station back in August of last year. And I spoke with hundreds of volunteers from community groups spending their earliest hour providing food, clothing, and essential items. I've seen partners in government work to create housing, centers, and opportunities out of nothing. I've been amazed by the generosity, creativity, and love in this city. I'm going to take a second just to thank my staff member, Fabiola, who has been awesome since the beginning of this, and I just want to say thank you so much for that. She's been a superhero. The federal government must provide sufficient funding for New York to meet the humanitarian need and systemic challenges of providing aid and opportunity. We're thankful for the funding that has already come. It is not enough by any stretch of the imagination. So we want to make sure that the majority of the money that's been already allocated so far comes to municipalities like New York City. We definitely need more. We have to get increased funding. We are asking the White House to make sure that there is funding for New York City to help deal with the crisis. The federal government should be helping to place people also in cities and states across the country rather than just a few like New York City. If we want to truly provide aid and not play politics, we're also asking the White House to immediately grant work authorizations so folks can come and get gainful employment. On the state level, the state government must take action on this issue both with resources for New York City and by activating other municipalities across the state. Governor Hochul needs to at least mention and acknowledge, not ignore the crisis or define it as just an issue for the city. Governor Hochul must acknowledge this crisis and must lead in providing what is needed to help. This is not just an issue for New York City, it is an issue for the entire state. Quite frankly, it is a national issue. As with the federal government, we need funding and we need resources. We also need the governor to engage other municipalities across our state to open up to also assist, making sure that folks need what they got, get what they need. I think it's important that we leaders and organizations here today are from many different backgrounds, neighborhoods, and communities. It is very vital that we all come together to support the newest and aspiring New Yorkers, asylum seekers who are at once fleeing and facing a crisis. City, state, and federal leadership can neither ignore the challenge nor aggravate it by stoking tensions and resentments. We have to actively choose to communicate words that unite those who are suffering, not allow the adoption of an us versus them mindset with our newest and aspiring New Yorkers. We oppose attitudes and actions that may stoke division or resentment by pitting communities against one another and call for unity, common humanity, and common support to meet these urgent needs. While it is very true that there have been communities struggling here for a very long time and systemic injustices in their way, I want to be clear that we lift that up. Yes, there are longtime New Yorkers who have been struggling for a very long time. There are black New Yorkers who have been struggling for a very long time. There are Latino, Latinx, brown communities of more color who have been struggling for a very long time, that have been here. But I also want to make clear that many of us have been pleading with government for years to address the problem. I've been on a council, I've been an elected official for 13 years. Before that, I was a housing advocate and a housing organizer. We have been pleading with government to address the housing shortages that have been around. Had that happened, this crisis wouldn't be so acute. So please don't take the failure of government as an opportunity to pit people who are hurting against one another. We can be clear in what we need and angry about where we are, but making sure we don't fall into scarcity politics that are dividing. I want to be clear, if you look through history, it is a dangerous moment in time, historically, when people are scared, people are in need, and we add division into that. So there's a way that we can have this conversation that unites us all so that we can get what we need, while being clear that New York City and what we're going through is not sustainable unless we get the assistance and things that we're asking for. As I mentioned, while it's true that there have been communities struggling for a long time, we have to make sure we use common and humane language to speak about everyone. Earlier this week, we honored the life and legacy of Dr. King, who knew that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Dr. King was very focused on the injustices that Black Americans were facing. But he was also clear that we have to lift up the struggles that everyone is facing as well. The movement is strongest when all who have seen injustice in our system stand for one another, not sow divisions among people most marginalized. We must all grow the movement together, rooted in compassion and conviction. Justice, equity, and support is not an either-or equation. We must all stand together to meet this moment, welcome our newest and aspiring New Yorkers, and then work on the long-standing injustices we know have persisted across our city. I want to be clear, as a son of immigrants, there are moments in time that we can point to where people came, for whatever reason, they were not welcome. There were people who came involuntarily. There were people who were told they would be welcome and they were not. These moments in time happen throughout our history in this country. This moment will decide how future generations talk about the narrative of how they came to America. And many times we will say how we think we would have acted at a moment in history. But the best way to show that is to show how you act now. These moments are not that different as we think than previous moments. And so we have to take that time. If we think we would have stood with people who were fighting for the most marginalized, then we have to do that right now. I want to thank my colleagues in government. Hope we can get to everyone who is here. So let me call folks out now. Comptroller Brad Lander, who's here, will be speaking next. Councilmember Shaker, Councilmember Reynoso, Councilmember Gutierrez. I always hate this because you look at people. Oh, Borough President Reynoso, Gutierrez, Councilmember Wrestler, Hanif, Gutierrez, Rivera, Feliz. Oh, sorry. I hate that. You know your mind is. You look at that person. God dang it, what's your name? All right. Thank you so much. So right now we'll call up Comptroller Lander.
All right, let's say thank you to the Public Advocate for convening this. And let's just take a minute to look at this extraordinary, diverse presser of folks from all corners of the city, whose families are from all corners of the world. For generations, for hundreds of years, New York City has thrived as a safe haven for people fleeing violence and war from every corner of the world, and then coming here to New York City, sometimes, as the Public Advocate said, voluntarily and sometimes involuntarily, sometimes welcomed and sometimes not welcomed, but still bringing their talents and their creativity and their hard work and their entrepreneurialism, and our city has thrived as a result. Immigration is a critical economic driver of our city, and you see that today. Immigrants are not just the folks delivering our food, they're also 51% of our small business owners. It's how our economy thrives, but it's more than that. It's New York City's very identity. It is who we are. And that remains today true in who you see coming. And let's remember, it's people from all corners of the world. We've got folks seeking asylum from Afghanistan, fleeing war, folks coming from Ukraine, fleeing Russian invasion. I hope you got to read about those Senegalese immigrants in the Times last week, or got to understand some of those families after the Twin Parks fire, African Muslim immigrants. And yes, it is folks from Venezuela who have walked across half a continent fleeing violence to find opportunity here. But let's be clear, it is not only a New York City tradition, it is a national obligation. The right to seek asylum, to find safe haven while your asylum case is considered, is international law and it is U.S. law. It is a national, it is a federal obligation to provide safe haven for those seeking asylum. And that's why when we say New York City needs the money from the federal government to provide the services and shelter, we're not only saying, hey, New York City's spending a lot, we need the resources. We are also saying New York City, in our tradition of welcome, is helping the United States of America meet its obligations under national and international law, and that's why the resources have to come here to help do it. While those folks are awaiting their asylum cases being processed, and especially until there's work authorization so they can work, federal government has an obligation. There is also a state obligation, and I want to be clear, for the vast majority of people on public assistance or who are not new arrivals, the state provides resources for shelter, but the state is not giving a dime right now to the city of New York for the shelter costs of asylum seekers. That has to change, and this set of people is calling on and will continue to call on and has been calling on the federal and the state government to step up and provide resources. But let's be clear, for generations, there has been room for newcomers in New York City. Today, there is room for newcomers in New York City. There will always be room for newcomers in New York City. We will work together to provide the resource, to get the resources, to provide the services, and as the public advocate so eloquently said, to join in unity with a message that builds a stronger city with people who are here and have been for a long time, and with those folks who are just arriving, so that we can all thrive together. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to alternate a little bit, advocacy and elected. As someone who identifies as a black American, someone who identifies as a Caribbean American, my family came from a small island of Grenada. We are clear that very often lost in this immigration discussion is the plight of black immigrants. Immigrants from Africa, immigrants from the Caribbean. We saw what happened to Haitian migrants who were seeking asylum. When they came up, they were met with whips. We often don't talk about the African immigrants who are coming as well. Thankful to the New York Times for an article they did. It was mentioned by the comptroller. So we want to make sure that voice is lifted up. We want to make sure that we are clear that we're talking about everyone who needs assistance here. And with that, we'd like to invite Envision Freedom's Carl Hamed Lipscomb.
Thanks. So I'm here today because the conversation about immigration in New York is becoming a story of us versus them, when the reality is that there isn't an us and a them, there's just an us. And asylum seekers, both the folks arriving by bus and also the hundreds of black immigrants arriving by plane and train that we don't hear about, are searching for the same safety and stability that we all want for ourselves and our families. But instead of dignity, respect, and support, they're being met with chaos. Chaos at the border, chaos at the bus stations, and chaos at the airports. And we deserve better. But as the public advocate said, what we're seeing isn't new. This is the natural consequence of resources and services being depleted from black, brown, and immigrant communities for years. Now, I'm a native New Yorker. It feels as though we're a dying breed these days. My family is both African American and Caribbean, and so I'm witnessing the crisis that we're facing, not just from the folks that we help each day at Envision Freedom Fund, but also folks in my own family who are struggling. Everyone is hurting. We're in the middle of a perfect storm here, and folks don't have what they need to survive. So we're here today to ask both the federal government and New York State to step up to provide relief, not just for the crisis affecting asylum seekers, but for the crisis affecting all of us. I'm proud to stand here today with the public advocate and the comptroller and all of our amazing elected officials and partners as we demand swift, urgent action, because again, we deserve better. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Borough President Antonio Reynoso.
Thank you so much. Le quiero dar las gracias al portavoz de la ciudad de Nueva York por el trabajo que está haciendo para traerle atención al problema de crisis que tenemos en esta ciudad. Nosotros queremos estar muy claros que invitamos a los inmigrantes que están buscando asilo aquí a Nueva York. Nosotros queremos asegurar que cuando lleguen estén seguros, y que lleguen con mucho amor. Aquí lo vamos a recibir con mucho amor. Queremos que ellos puedan comenzar el camino a realizar el sueño americano. Y eso puede pasar y siempre ha pasado aquí en Nueva York. Eso es muy importante. Nunca vamos a cambiar la tela que es Nueva York. Pero necesitamos ayuda. Lo que estamos preguntando, queremos recibir son los recursos del Estado, de la gobernadora Kathy Hochul, que en este momento no nos ha dado ni $1 a la ciudad para ayudar a los que están buscando asistencia aquí en este estado. También el gobierno federal nos ha dado un poco de asistencia y recursos, pero no suficiente para ayudar a la gente que están llegando aquí a Nueva York. Diferente que a otros estados, aquí los queremos recibir, están invitados y queremos asegurar que sigan entrando a Nueva York, pero nada más se puede hacer si los recursos existen. Y sin el gobierno federal y el gobierno estatal dándonos los recursos necesarios, nunca lo vamos a lograr. Pues estamos aquí en unidad, asegurando que ellos nos oigan, que estamos apoyando el esfuerzo de este gobierno, del portavoz de la ciudad, asegurando que nos oigan. Lo recibimos con manos abiertas, pero necesitamos los recursos del gobierno federal y del gobierno estatal. Muchas gracias.
Next, we have Theo Moore from New York Immigration Coalition.
Good afternoon. My name is Theo Moore. I'm the Vice President of Policy and Programs at the New York Immigration Coalition. Quickly want to talk about scarcity here in New York City. Once again, I'm a lifelong New Yorker as well, and when I hear people talking about scarcity in New York City, it reminds me of when Fortune 500 multi-billionaire CEOs of corporations talk about they can't raise wages for workers while they're not taking pay cuts. Like, we don't have a scarcity problem. There's no need for austerity budgets. What we have is an issue with how we prioritize things. And we should be prioritizing people and the most needy at all times. There is no scarcity. There is no need for austerity budgets. What we do have is we do need to have the federal government and the state government step up. But whether the federal or state government step up does not excuse New York City from its moral responsibilities. We are New York City and we will always be that, so we always have to do what we've done when people come to us for help. Now, I understand that there are mixed messages out there, and we have individuals who may be following these messages and emulating the styles of what we hear coming from places like Texas or Florida. And when we see some of these mixed messages coming out and we start to emulate them, we should actually look to New Yorkers who, since the spring, have been stepping up in so many ways and do what they do. When we hear people saying that we can't feed hungry people, look to New Yorkers who themselves are dealing with rising costs in the grocery store and went to those grocery stores and helped feed people. We have to look to New Yorkers, the best of us, who, you know, themselves, their rent is rising and decided to try to house people. May only have one winter coat themselves and decided to find another one to give to someone so that they could survive this winter. New Yorkers, everyday New Yorkers have been standing up since the spring when we first started seeing buses of individuals arrive. And we just need government to step up in that same way. Do like regular New Yorkers do. Thank you.
All right. Next, we have the chair of the Immigration Committee on the City Council, Councilmember Jumaane.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councilmember Shahana Hanif, Chair of the Immigration Committee, co-chair of the Progressive Caucus. I want to give a big shout out to our public advocate. I want to also send gratitude to my colleagues in the City Council who've thoughtfully used our oversight powers to hold this administration to account. We need help, and I'm proud that we continue to double down on ensuring that New Yorkers know and that asylum seekers know that this city will continue to be their home, it will be safe, and it will be a sanctuary. So the public advocate has already named what our priorities are, and I'm here to reiterate that we absolutely need to fast-track work authorizations. This is a policy fix, a simple policy fix. in our federal government that must be addressed expeditiously. These folks are not here to sit in hotel rooms. We need to make sure that they work. The work authorization process has been backlogged. People have to wait months in order to apply and then need to wait to get to work. That is absurd. It is unjust. We want to make sure that they're working right away and that they're able to feed their families. At the state level, I was really disappointed that our governor had no mention of asylum seekers in her state of the state. That is not okay, and many of us have noticed that, and we will hold her to account too. We must make sure and push the state to provide the dollars, to provide the resources, and guarantee that there's a streamlined process of getting these folks from shelters to permanent housing. The state must work on this. And at the city level, Mr. Mayor, it has taken so much pressure to get this administration to undo, backtrack, prohibitive housing practices like the outdoor tent city is only under oath. We have to bring them into City Hall, at the council chambers, and push them to backtrack on prohibitive policies. We don't want that. We want to be collaborative. We want to work together. And finally, I just want to thank all of the New Yorkers, La Colmena, Make the Road New York, Gowanus Mutual Aid, Team TLC, New York Immigration Coalition. Countless New Yorkers are showing up for asylum seekers every single day with limited capacity. This council will fight our hardest to make sure that we are supporting these groups, that they have capacity to continue serving every single asylum seeker. Thank you so much.
Next we have Jumaane Cawthon from Families for Freedom.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank our public advocate, Jumaane, for helping me and my family when my former spouse, Jean Montreville, was deported back to Haiti. We was able to get him back, but we have to not, sending an asylum seeker back to a country they fled is like a death sentence. I'm calling on the federal government, the state government, and the local government to do more. I'm a former city employee where I worked in social services, where I saw this problem just going on like a cycle. They can't act like a few months ago. We have resources to have people in the corner with these COVID tents. We have COVID under control. We can use the money that we put into the pandemic to help these asylum seekers. We need to fast track this whole system, and we need to give them fee waivers. If they come in here with no money, why are we going to charge them money for a work permit? That makes no sense to me. And I will continue to come out and stand up for these asylum seekers. A mother called me yesterday when I was at another conference. They put an ankle monitor on her. This is New York. We shouldn't be putting ankle monitors. It's like modern day slavery over and over again. We saw what happened in Texas where they were beating Haitians with whips, and then our president said it needs to be investigated. What needs to be investigated when we saw this in black and white? We have to stand and welcome these asylum seekers. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I want to call on Councilmember Feliz, the co-chair of the Black Latino Agent Caucus.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I'm New York City Council Member Oswald Feliz, also the co-chair of the Black Caucus. I want to thank all my colleagues that have been working around the clock every single day to provide the services to these asylum seekers. And I also want to thank our public advocate for organizing this presser. And I'll start with what we all know, which is that our city is going through so much recovering from the coronavirus pandemic, a pandemic that affected our city every way possible, our housing, our schools, and so much more. And if we're going through a lot, imagine what these families seeking asylum are going through. Families that left the only home that they had ever known and left everything behind and came to the city of New York in search of opportunity. Just imagine what they are going through. For the last 3 to 6 months, and I know I speak for all of us, it's been the privilege of a lifetime to be able to help these families. But 3 to 6 months later, we're asking for help. We need help. As we all know, the topic of immigration and asylum seekers, that is a federal topic and that is a federal matter. We need help so that we could be able to build the housing that these families deserve, and we need funds so that we could be able to provide the food and educational services and job training services that these families desperately need and deserve so they could be able to obtain stability. So I'm really proud and honored to join all my colleagues, and I want to thank everybody that has been working on this topic. And briefly, en español, los últimos 3 a 6 meses ha sido el privilegio de poder trabajar y ayudar a estas familias buscando asilos. Pero ahora nosotros necesitamos ayuda. Necesitamos ayuda del gobierno federal, fondos para poder crear la vivienda y poder dar servicios y comida que estas familias necesitan y se merecen. So, estamos aquí pidiéndole ayuda al gobierno federal y también al Estado para que podamos dar los servicios que estas familias necesitan. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Next, we'll have Daisy Flores from Make the Road, followed by Councilmember Juan, followed by Ajifanta Morena from Muslim Community Network.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here. My name is Daisy Flores. I am a lead organizer with Make the Road New York. I am here to remind Mayor Adams that New York City must be a welcoming city for all, and that means that its leaders must not use divisive language that harms immigrant communities and asylum seekers. The mayor keeps saying that there is no room for more asylum seekers and migrants and that New York City is full. At the same time, the mayor keeps bemoaning that too many people are leaving New York City and saying he wants people in Florida to move back. So which is it, Mr. Mayor? Are we full, or are we only full when it comes to migrants and asylum seekers from Latin America? The mayor has also continued to wrongly suggest that asylum seekers are to blame for his dangerous cut budgets to schools, libraries, and more. That too is divisive and unacceptable. Welcoming immigrants is part of the very fabric of our city. It has made this city strong, diverse, and successful, and it will continue to do so. We agree with Public Advocate Williams and Mr. Mayor Adams that federal support is truly needed, and the work permits should be expedited soon. Proper coordination and collaboration between federal, state, and local governments are key to successfully welcoming asylum seekers. But Mr. Mayor, asylum seekers are not the problem. They are fleeing very difficult circumstances in search of a better life for them and their families, and their rights must be protected. We should also focus on the huge, long opportunity here. These new New Yorkers are going to strengthen and positively contribute to our city's economy. Let's make sure they are housed and have access to basic services. And let's invest in adult literacy and workforce development. Today, we call for unity and say to Mayor Adams, stop dividing New Yorkers, and instead we want to keep working together to ensure New York is a welcoming city and everyone's needs are met. Briefly en Spanish, mi nombre es Daisy Flores, soy organizadora y líder de Make the Road New York. Estoy aquí para recordarle al alcalde de la ciudad de Nueva York que debe ser una ciudad acogedora para todos, y eso significa que sus líderes no deben usar un lenguaje que divida y perjudique a las comunidades de inmigrantes y solicitantes de asilo. El alcalde dice que ha sugerido erróneamente que los solicitantes de asilo tienen la culpa de sus peligrosos recortes de presupuesto. Eso también promueve la división y es inaceptable. Señor alcalde, los solicitantes de asilo no son el problema, están huyendo de circunstancias difíciles. Hoy llamamos a la unidad y decimos al alcalde que deje de dividir a los neoyorquinos. En cambio, queremos seguir trabajando juntos. Thank you so much for the invite, for uniting us.
Thank you. Councilmember Juan.
Good morning. My name is Julie Wan. I'm the chair of contracts for the City Council. And I stand before you as somebody who stepped foot on U.S. soil in 1998 for the first time as an immigrant from a country that was destitute from a financial collapse. I now stand here before you as a council member. This is how important it is for us to remember, whether you've been in this country for one day, whether you've been in this city for 2 months, whether you've been in this city for your whole life. We are all New Yorkers. And anybody that comes to this city as a sanctuary city and says, I want to be here, I want to live here, it is our duty as a government, especially as the mayor of New York City, to do everything you can so that they have basic necessities met to survive, like food, shelter, clothing, healthcare, mental health, and everything else in wraparound services to make sure that they can thrive and that they can continue to be here. It is just a distraction when the mayor says it's us against them. It is for all of us that we need basic needs met. Right now in my district with more than 30 shelters, I'm getting phone calls from counselors, guidance counselors, nurses, doctors, community organizers. They are letting me know that children are coming to school hungry. Children are dealing with rapid weight loss, diarrhea. I have had a man commit suicide in my district in a shelter, and the family was forced to sleep in that same exact room. This is not okay. We are calling on the governor to make sure that she at least acknowledges that we are in the midst of a migrant crisis, that she needs to do more, she needs to provide funding, and we are also calling on our federal partners to make sure that they are investing in every single one of us as New Yorkers of equal rights. I do not want to hear ever again that anyone is less worthy of care and dignity than anybody else because of how many days they've lived in this country. So I will continue to keep the council, the mayor accountable, along with the council as well as the public advocate, the comptroller, and everybody else, to say that all of us deserve equal rights, all of us deserve opportunity to make sure that their work papers are expedited, as well as permanent transitional homes and supportive housing for these people, because hotel shelters are not permanent solutions for them, and that we will continue to look out for them and make sure that they have mental health and health care as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.